Hi everyone, Kristina here. Today I'm going to be walking you through 3 very easy minimal supply holiday cards. These are great for last minute cards. I'm going to start out by showing you the watercolor paper you need. You're going to need 2 pieces of watercolor paper cut to 4 1/4 by 11. And you're going to be making 2 cards out of these. And we're going to make a slightly larger card. We're going to make a 5 by 7 card. So I've got some watercolor paper cut to 10 inches wide by 7 inches tall. I also have a board here that I'll be taping my work down to. You don't have to have this board, but you will want the tape. You can tape it down to your work surface, your table, a clipboard, anything like that. Got some inexpensive watercolor paints. These are from Prang, and I actually bought these at my local grocery store. I think it was just a couple bucks. These are really inexpensive, but quite good quality for what they are. I really recommend these for like a starter set. Got 2 different watercolor brushes. The sizes I'm using today are a size 2 and a size 6 round, but really you just want a really small brush and like a little bit of a larger brush. And then I've got 3 pens. I have a black pen right here, this black pen that's waterproof. It doesn't need to be waterproof. It can be any black pen. I've got a white gel pen, and then I also have a gold marker. And that gold marker I'm showing right now, I'll actually swap it out for a different one, and I'll mention that when we get there. So I'm going to start out with the very first card. I've got one of those smaller sheets of watercolor paper, and I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm also going to tape it down to this board just so that the fold doesn't keep flapping up and makes it a little more difficult to work. So I've got that taped down to my work surface. I'm going to start by doing a little bit of sketching just so I have a better idea where I'll be painting. It's always a great idea to do some sketching just beforehand so you have a better idea of where things are positioned and things like that. So I didn't mention at the beginning, but you will need a ruler. So I've got a ruler here, and I'm just connecting the ruler from corner to corner and then drawing an X in the center. This will tell me exactly where the center of the card is. And the idea behind this card is to have the word joy really, really large right across the center. So the O in the word joy will be in the exact center of the card. I'm also taking my ruler and drawing some horizontal lines about 1 1/4 away from the top and also 1 1/4 away from the bottom. This is just going to kind of block out the area where the word will be. So the O in the center of the word, we're actually going to make it into a wreath. So I'm going to very lightly sketch a circle. It doesn't need to be perfect. This is just going to give you an idea of the shape of the wreath. And after I have that drawn, I'm going to erase that X in the center so that I don't have to worry about it later. And I'm also going to kind of just lightly go over that circle. I want to keep some of it there so I can still see it, but I don't want to leave a really dark line. Okay, so I've got my watercolors off to the side. I'm going to mix up 2 different colors of paint. I'm going to have one be this green shade, and I'm going to keep it just as is. And the other puddle of paint is going to be green with some blue in it. I want it to be a little more of a tealish green color. So I'm going to take my smallest paintbrush, and I'm going to start painting some really rough leaf shapes to make this wreath. And I'm going to leave very large gaps in between because I'm going to be using 2 different colors, and I'm also going to be using a lighter variation of this color. So I need to leave gaps for those leaves to go in. So I'm going around, and I'm also making sure that the direction of the leaves is all in one direction. I happen to be doing these in a clockwise direction, but if you are more comfortable going a different direction, you can definitely do that. You just want to make sure that your leaves kind of all point in one direction, because if they're kind of all over the place, sometimes it can look a little bit messy. So when you're doing more of a freehand painting like this, it will just help you out and make it look a little bit more organized if you have all of your wreath shapes going in one direction, all of your leaf shapes going in one direction. I added some water to my paintbrush, and I'm diluting this green paint. And then I'm going to come in and add some of these lighter green shapes. I'm only going to do a few of these since I do have that third color, the teal shade, that I'll be bringing in and filling in all the gaps. So I don't need too many of this very, very light green shade. Let that dry completely. And now I'm coming in with the teal shade. And some of the teal leaves will overlap the green leaves that I've already painted, and that's totally okay. I just want to make sure that, like I mentioned before, all of my leaf shapes are going in the same direction. It's going to give this wreath a little bit more cohesion. And I'm going to go around and add this teal shape, filling in all of those gaps. And if you have an area where it's looking a little bit sparse or it feels like it needs something there, go ahead and fill it in with this teal shade. It's going to really fill out the wreath and make sure it feels nice and finished, because you don't want any areas that look really skinny or like there aren't enough leaves there. So I'm going to add more of these in. I'm going to overlap those leaves that I already have painted. And I'm going to make sure I grab some of the more concentrated color on my palette and just fill in all of these gaps. Before the next step, you're going to want to let your wreath completely dry, because we're going to bring in some berries. So I've got a nice red shade on my very, very small brush, and I'm just going to drop in some very small circles to create berries. And when I'm adding berries, I like to have them kind of moving all around. And I also like to have a couple areas where I have 3 berries all together, and maybe one spot where 2 berries are close together. So this just gives it a little bit more of a random feel. I think it gives it a more of a finished feel as well. So there's my wreath. I let it dry completely. And now I'm penciling on the J and the letter Y to complete the word joy. So I am going to remove my watercolor piece from my board before I move on, and I will erase that horizontal line at the very top and also the very bottom. So like I said before, I did swap out my gold pens. I ended up with this Uniball Signo gold pen. My gold marker that I showed at the beginning of the video was dried out. I had had it for a long time, and it was time to put it out to pasture, so to speak. So I grabbed another gold pen that I had in my stash. Thankfully, I had another one. So I just went over the J and the Y, and then I used my ruler to add a very thin border around the outer edge. And after I drew the ruled lines on, I did go back over it just to thicken them up a little bit, so it looked about the same width as the J and the Y. And that finishes this very first card. Super simple and easy. If you wanted to make multiples of this card, you could do it in an assembly line fashion. I think that would be really, really great. So moving on to the second card, I've got that other piece of watercolor paper, the smaller piece. I'm going to fold that in half. And this time the card is going to be portrait. It's going to be tall. And I'm going to start by writing on the greeting first. That's because I want the greeting to be down in this bottom right corner, and then the painting I'm going to be adding later is going to go around it. I'm penciling on my greeting. It's going to say, "Let it snow," and I'm using a really, really tall, skinny letter design for the words "let it." And then for snow, I'm going to have it be a more cursive letter style. So I'm penciling it on. And after I have all of the words penciled on, I'm going to take my black pen and go right over those areas. I'm just going to fill it in and make sure I have a nice, crisp line for all of these words. I'm not going to erase the pencil yet. I'll wait for a little bit, but I am going to take my pencil and draw in some circle shapes. I'm varying the sizes of the circles. I want some big, medium, small. I'm going to be painting all of these, so you want to keep that in mind. You want a lot of big or small shapes, just want to vary them. So now I'm going to take a few different shades of blue. I've also got one that's a little bit more purple, and I'm going to paint all of these circles. And they don't need to be perfect. They don't have to be precise. That's why I wasn't tracing a circle or anything. I was just sketching them on, because these are going to be very organic looking, very quirky. We're not going for perfect circles here. We want something that has a little bit of personality. So I started out with this nice blue shade, and then I watered it down a little bit and added some lighter blue dots. Then I came in with another blue shade and then a teal shade as well. And when it comes to the teal shade, I did water it down a little bit and do some larger watered down areas and added more of that watered down blue. While that dried, I erased all of the Let It Snow penciling. And then when it was completely dry, I came back in with a white gel pen and drew on some snowflakes. And I'm just having fun drawing some snowflakes. None of these are really precise, but this is kind of a fact that I learned a little while ago. Snowflakes in real life have 6 points. So if you want to, you can keep that in mind. But I did create some of these snowflakes that had more than 6 points. Really just depends. I think they're pretty playful when they're just drawn on and kind of sketched on without anything super crisp. I think it looks really, really fun. I did keep some of those dots without any snowflakes as well. So that's the second card, all finished, the Let It Snow card. Now we're going to use that larger piece of watercolor paper. So I'll fold that in half so that it's 5 by 7. And then I'm going to do a little bit of sketching. I'm going to take my ruler and add a little bit of a border around the sides and also the very top of the card. When I go to paint this, I'm actually not going to be painting all the way up to these pencil lines. I'm going to keep it a little bit away from these lines, but I just wanted to preserve the white border around the outside. So as you can see, I took some blue painter's tape and I kind of masked off a tree shape as well as the ground. But if you don't want to do that with your tape, you could definitely just pencil a tree shape onto your card, and you'll just have to be careful as you paint it. So I'm mixing up a nice navy blue teal shade, and I wanted to show the color mixing because I started with blue, added some orange, added black, which overpowered it, added more blue in, and then eventually added a little bit of green, a little more blue, and then I tested it out on a piece of scratch paper. It's a little too green, so I added some more blue, and then I tested it one more time, and that was the perfect shade that I had in mind. I'm going to start out by using a clean paintbrush. There's just clean water on this, and I'm just going to add water to the area where I want my color to be. This is going to help the color flow freely. So when I add that blue on there, it's only going to travel and move to areas where I've already wet the paper. So I'm just going to let the color fall down here. I'm going to add it in a couple more spots just to get a little bit darker. Then I let it dry completely and brought in a second layer of color. And this is going to give me some of those kind of more sharp, harsh lines, like a big watercolor background effect. After that was done, I peeled off my blue painter's tape, and I'm left with a white Christmas tree shape. I'm going to be adding a little bit of color to the very bottom that's going to finish off the bottom of the Christmas tree. And I did that by just diluting some black watercolor paint, so it was very, very pale. And then I painted in this very light gray. I'm going to give the bottom of the tree a little bit of a curved edge at the very bottom. And I'm just freehanding this, just connecting those 2 points, adding a little bit of that shading. So after that was completely dry, I came in with my pencil eraser and erased those lines that I added at the very beginning of this card. Now I'm going to take my pencil and pencil in the greeting. I'm going to have the main greeting, or the main word in the greeting, say peace. So I started by writing the letter A, which is the center letter of the word peace. And then I wrote the letters around it. That makes sure that that word is in the very center of the card. I then wrote wishing you right above that. I didn't pencil it in. I just kind of freeballed it and hoped for the best. But you could definitely use a pencil to write in wishing you before you go in with the gold pen or marker as well, if you feel more comfortable doing that. So I added the word peace. Then I added a star right above my tree. And this gold pen looks great on top of the darker blue background. I think it really, really shines. I also took the gold pen and added some very small dots onto the Christmas tree to sort of look like either lights or ornaments. That finishes this very, very sparkly gold card. I really like the gold details on this one. That finishes the third card. So all 3 cards were super easy to create. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back after Christmas, and we will get into some thank you cards for Christmas gifts and also for New Year's. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next video.